Welcome back, my fellow Chibits, to part 3 of my Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood review. I am very sorry I'm having to split these up into different parts. It's because I cannot upload over 15 minutes, just to let you all know once again. And I know you all want to hear my thoughts as soon as possible when it comes to this series, so I'm just splitting these into parts. I'm going to be uploading them individually. So, like I said, I am very sorry. So this time, in part 3 of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, I want to focus on Philosopher's Stones. I want to kind of dive in more to Philosopher's Stones and the real purpose of Philosopher's Stones and what they really served when it came to this series. So, if you don't know about Philosopher's Stones, there's different myths, mythology, and different things beyond Philosopher's Stones. Like Nicholas Flamel in history and myth was a person that was hunting down Philosopher's Stones and gained the elixir of life, the eternal life, the stone that can grant you eternal life where you can live forever. And it's cool how this concept was used in this anime, Philosopher's Stone. Now, what's really crazy is the darkness beyond the name. This grand elixir that could give anyone immortality caused such pain and anguish and so much hell throughout the entire series, Philosopher's Stones. So, throughout the entirety of Brotherhood, Philosopher's Stones have been the something that can go past equal exchange. It overcomes the natural laws of equal exchange of alchemy. And Philosopher's Stones have been shown time and time again to do some impossible feats, saving people near death, healing someone's eyes, also making artificial human beings, and even going as far to just do things that normal human beings possibly can never accomplish, even making chimeras, humanoid chimeras. And that is just the tipping point of Philosopher's Stones in this series. The main theme of the series that really supports the big backbone, I guess you could call, of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is Philosopher's Stones. Without Philosopher's Stones, you could not have Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, because the main concept of Brotherhood is to make a Philosopher's Stone, a giant Philosopher's Stone that can drag down God. And that was the main goal of our villain, Father. So, the Philosopher's Stones, getting into some of the concepts that these Philosopher's Stones have done, is they are a mixture of human souls. They're humans placed into this form of a Philosopher's Stone, this red elixir. It can be many shapes and forms. It can be liquid, it can be solid, it possibly can even be gas. Philosopher's Stones take up all sorts of different forms, even human being type forms, and they can be any shapes or sizes. And to see this, that's just the appearance of a Philosopher's Stone. But what's really going on in the Philosopher's Stone is agony, pain, and suffering of how humans are forced to live in this entrapped area, forced to be used as a resource for others' personal gain. That is what a Philosopher's Stone is in this series. And it's not some holy contraption that is a fix-it-all and, oh yeah, hey, look, I got a Philosopher's Stone like this and now I can fix everything, I can bring people back from the dead. The thing is, even with a Philosopher's Stone, there is some limitations. A Philosopher's Stone cannot, in fact, bring back the dead. The dead cannot come back. When a dead person dies, or a person dies, and the soul moves on, the soul does not come back. It's gone. And that is the arrogance of humanity trying to bring back human beings to step into God's realm, or as we should call them, Truth's realm in this series. And before I even get into Truth, the thing is, okay, the many shapes and forms of Philosopher's Stones we have seen throughout Brotherhood, one of the most unique Philosopher's Stones we witnessed was Homunculus and von Hohenheim. Those are the two very unique Philosopher's Stones in the series, besides Homunculus and General Father and the other Sin Homunculus. What's really cool is how there's different ways to really look at these Philosopher's Stones. Like, there's two different paths that characters made in this series. One was to use Philosopher's Stones for their own personal gain and forcibly turn these people into resources where they can just gain immense power. And then there was another side with only a couple selected few throughout Brotherhood that wanted to use Philosopher's Stones not for they can personally gain from the benefit of others, but to use these souls to help others, to save others, and to make, I guess, amends for the souls that were used in this horrible act of being turned into a Philosopher's Stone. And that is the role that von Hohenheim played in the series. He was a humanoid Philosopher's Stone that was able to, after countless years, hundreds of years, being a Philosopher's Stone, he was able to communicate with thousands of people inside of him, each individual soul inside of him. He was able to communicate with them, talk with them, figure out their names, and, figure out what they liked, their dreams, their goals. And that in of itself is just showing you how long of life that von Hohenheim lived, and what the power of a Philosopher's Stone can really give someone. But truthfully, the power of a Philosopher's Stone, if you were in von Hohenheim's shoes, it would be suffering. It would be straight up suffering, because from his perspective, throughout the series, he was very sad, in pain, to be able to live for so long and watching the people he loved, the people he cares about, die before his very eyes. He saw his children age before his eyes, as he didn't grow older, he didn't grow a day. And his children were aging before his eyes, his wife aging before his eyes. He was hurt to see how the very people he loved would die before he ever died, and he's lived hundreds of years. And this is the pain and agony that a Philosopher's Stone has brought to someone that gained immortality. And, of course, von Hohenheim did not ask for immortality. He never chose to be immortal. He never wanted to be immortal. He was given that immortality thanks to Homunculus, or the dwarf in the flask. But to see how this Philosopher's Stone had so much pain, and had to deal with so many conflicting emotions with these different people inside of him, and trying to fight for his own identity, like he had an identity crisis throughout the series, it's sad to see how tragic of a life he lived. And at the very end, at the very least, he was able to make amends for what he has done, and he died with a smile on his face. But in the act of him being a Philosopher's Stone, though, if it wasn't for him being a Philosopher's Stone, the series would have ended in a very dark way. If it wasn't for von Hohenheim's self-sacrifice as a Philosopher's Stone, giving up his Philosopher's Stone, and multiple people in him wanting to willingly sacrifice themselves for the greater good, this series would have had a much darker ending. It would have had a very, very dark ending. So for von Hohenheim to go around and putting his different souls into the ground to stop alchemy, or remove the souls underneath the ground, this giant Philosopher's Stone that Father had, it saved a lot of lives. With the cost of thousands of lives, they managed to save even more lives. And that is where I think it's very ironic how the ending of the series was made. For instance, when it came to the ending, the final episode, the epilogue of Brotherhood, you had it to where the Elric brothers talked about they wanted a new concept for alchemy. Like how, if someone gave you a 10, okay, you would give them 11. You would give them even more. And this is kind of what that symbolizes. I don't think it indirectly was meant to be like that, but that's kind of how I took it. Even though all these souls were taken away, like 3,000 people, or even more than that, were forced inside of this stone, these 3,000 people saved 50 million lives. 50 million. That just goes to show you right there. It just goes to show you that concept towards the end. To give a 10 when you get 11 and stuff like that. I like that little concept right there when it came to Brotherhood. So, getting past that point, the thing is, okay, von Hohenheim as a character, or as a Philosopher's Stone, he was the main reason why some of the downfall of Father even took place to begin with. If it wasn't for von Hohenheim's dedication and will to talk with everybody in the Philosopher's Stone and learn their names, communicate with them, this series would have ended dark. It would have been a very dark end. And to see how he saved countless lives, you really have to commend the man. You really have to commend this man that has suffered a long time. You have to commend him for saving so many. And it's sad how his son, Edward, treated von Hohenheim throughout the entire series. It makes me sad to see how he was constantly just called like a bastard and stuff like that. He's just always made fun of by Edward because he couldn't accept him as a father. But at the very least, he was always thinking about his sons. He was always trying to make his sons better. And he, even at the end, he kind of blamed himself for the reason why his wife died and why they decided to give up their bodies in the first place to do what they did. He blamed himself. And that just goes to show you how caring he was and, how he felt about his sons. But at the very end, he was able to find peace. So his conclusion of his character was definitely a warranted end. I liked it. I liked the ending of von Hohenheim's character, especially his role as a Philosopher's Stone. It saved countless lives, even though it was a treacherous and devilish act that was done. So, yeah. Other uses of the Philosopher's Stone, however, it comes to play when it came to Father. As I already said in part 2 of my, breakdown of the Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Father used the Philosopher's Stone in a very different manner. He wanted to use it for power, self-gain. He made homunculus through it. He was the very incarnation of a monster. And even at the end, when he finally kind of attained God, you saw him kind of making creatures, human beings, and he was using the souls from the Philosopher's Stone and turning them into people. Even though they weren't really people, he was giving them some form of flesh. And it was kind of sickening the way it was done. Like, it just goes to show you how twisted he was as a person. And how evil a Philosopher's Stone can be. And that's what the series does. It shows Philosopher's Stone not in a good light, but in a bad light. But there was some instances that a Philosopher's Stone was used in a good sense. Especially with how it saved Mustang's eyes. So I'm going to end this part here, and I'm going to go into the next part of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood's review. Sorry about, constant parts, but I have to do it. So you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.